You find a place, you sign the lease, you move in. The rent feels high, sure, but manageable. You tell yourself this is normal. Everyone rents. Everyone pays monthly. It's just how life works now. And for a while it does work. You pay your rent on time. You decorate a little. You settle into routines. You feel independent. Responsible. Like you're doing what you're supposed to do. No matter how much you work, no matter how carefully you budget, the money comes in, the rent goes out, and what's left never feels like enough. That's when renting in America begins to drain people. Not all at once, but drop by drop. Rent is different from other expenses. When you pay for food, it's gone, but you ate. When you pay for gas, it's gone, but you traveled. When you pay rent, it's gone, and you're right back where you started next month. Nothing builds. Nothing accumulates. Nothing stays with you, and at first, you don't question it. Because you're told not to. Renting is presented as normal. Temporary, a stepping stone. Something you do before the real part of life begins. But for millions of Americans, renting isn't temporary. It's permanent. Years go by, then decades. And the stepping stone never leads anywhere. What makes this draining isn't just the amount of rent. It's the way rent grows while everything else stays uncertain. Rent goes up almost every year. Sometimes a little, sometimes a lot. Often without explanation. Your paycheck doesn't rise the same way. Benefits don't increase at the same pace. Expenses pile up. And suddenly, the place that once felt affordable starts squeezing you. You adjust. You cut back. You compromise. Maybe you stop saving. Maybe you skip vacations. Maybe you delay medical care. Maybe you put groceries on a credit card. Not because you're irresponsible, but because rent doesn't wait. Rent is unforgiving. It doesn't care if you had a rough month. It doesn't care if your hours were cut. It doesn't care if something unexpected happened. It shows up every month, full amount, right on time. And missing it isn't an option. The fear of missing rent is a special kind of stress. It sits in the background of your life. You don't think about it constantly, but it's always there, influencing decisions, shaping priorities. You stay in jobs you don't like because rent needs stability. You avoid risks because rent punishes uncertainty. You delay change because rent makes change expensive. This is one of the first hidden costs: lost freedom. Renting ties you to predictability, not growth. Predictability. And predictability is fragile in an economy where jobs shift, hours fluctuate, and emergencies are common. Security deposits, application fees, pet fees, parking fees. Fees that feel small individually but add up quickly. Money that could have gone towards savings disappears before you even unpack. And when you leave, you rarely get it all back. Something is always deducted. Cleaning, wear and tear, repairs you didn't cause. And finding it feels exhausting. The power imbalance is clear. You need the money, but you also need the reference. You need the place. You need the next landlord to say yes, so you let it go. That's another drain. Lost leverage. Renters don't have control. They borrow stability from someone else. And that borrowed stability can be taken away with notice. A lease ends, a rent hike comes, a building is sold. Suddenly, your home isn't secure anymore. Home should feel safe. But for many renters, it feels conditional. That insecurity changes how people live. They don't invest emotionally. They don't settle fully. They keep things temporary because the situation is temporary, even when it lasts for years. You don't paint the walls. You don't fix things properly. You don't imagine long-term life there. You exist in a constant state of not quite home. And that affects mental health more than people admit. There's also the moving cost cycle. When rent increases beyond what you can handle, moving feels like the solution. But moving is expensive. First month's rent, last month's rent. New deposit, truck, time off work. Utility setup fees. So you pay thousands just to keep renting. That money doesn't reduce rent long term. It doesn't build equity. It doesn't protect you from the next increase. It just resets the cycle. And each move chips away at savings, energy, and stability. People underestimate how draining that is over time. Another quiet cost shows up in how renters are treated. Maintenance requests feel like favors instead of rights. You hesitate to complain. You worry about being labeled difficult. You accept delays. You live with issues longer than you should. Because renters know one truth very well. You're replaceable. If you leave, someone else will take your place. Probably at a higher rent. That knowledge shifts the balance of power completely. So renters tolerate things homeowners wouldn't: noise, repairs, mold, old appliances, poor insulation that drives up utility bills. And those utility bills are another hidden drain. Older rental units often cost more to heat and cool. Windows leak air, systems are inefficient. But upgrades cost money, and landlords don't feel the monthly impact. Renters do. So you pay more every month, not because you use more, but because the building is outdated, and you can't fix it. All of this adds up quietly, slowly, over years. People look back and realize they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in rent and have nothing to show for it. No asset, no equity, no security, just memories and receipts. This realization hits hard when people reach certain milestones. When friends buy homes, when families settle, when retirement feels closer. Renters start asking questions they didn't ask before. Where did my money go? Why am I still here? Why does it feel like I worked so hard for so little progress? Those questions can feel heavy, especially when the answer isn't simple. Because renting isn't just a personal choice, it's a structural reality. Housing prices rose faster than wages. Interest rates fluctuated. Down payments grew out of reach. Credit requirements tightened. And suddenly, renting wasn't a step. It was the only option. Yet the system still treats renters like they're temporary guests. That disconnect is draining in itself. People internalize the struggle. They think they failed, that they didn't plan well enough, that they should have done something differently. But when millions of people face the same outcome, it's not individual failure. It's a system under strain. And the system quietly transfers wealth upward. Renters pay monthly. Landlords accumulate equity. Property values rise. Rent rises with them. And renters stay stuck paying more for the same space. This wealth gap widens without noise, without headlines, without urgency. Just monthly payments. This is why renting feels exhausting, even when nothing is wrong. You're always running, but never arriving. And this is only the surface. Because the deeper drain of renting isn't just financial, it's psychological. It's the way it shapes how people see their future. And that's where this story goes next. Over time, renting doesn't just drain money. It drains certainty. And certainty is something humans need more than they realize. When you don't know where you'll be living next year or even next month, your brain stays in survival mode. You might not notice it day to day, but it shows up in small ways. You hesitate to buy furniture that really fits the space. You avoid putting down roots. You don't fully relax because deep down, you know this place might not be yours for long. That constant low-level uncertainty is exhausting. Home is supposed to be the place where life feels steady, where you recover from the world, where you breathe. But for many renters, home feels temporary, even when they've been there for years. It feels borrowed, conditional, like something that can be taken away with a letter on the door or an email in your inbox. And that affects how people plan their lives. People delay getting married because they don't feel settled. They delay having kids because they don't know if they'll be able to afford a bigger place next year. They delay adopting pets because pet fees keep rising. They delay starting businesses, changing careers, or going back to school because rent needs predictability. Rent quietly becomes the center of decision-making. You don't ask, what do I want to do with my life? You ask, what can I afford without risking my housing? That shift is subtle, but powerful. And it's not just individuals. Families feel this pressure too. Parents renting often carry an extra layer of stress. School districts matter, but moving costs money. Rent increases force families to relocate, sometimes far from support systems. Kids change schools. Routines break. Stability gets shaken. Children feel this more than adults think. They sense when parents are worried. They notice the tension when rent is due. They hear conversations about money late at night. Even if no one explains it, they feel it. That emotional weight passes down quietly. Another drain comes from the way renting limits wealth building. Homeownership isn't just about having a place to live. In America, it's one of the main ways people build long-term wealth. Equity grows. Payments eventually end. Value accumulates. Rent doesn't do that. Every rent payment builds someone else's future, not yours. And while not everyone wants to own a home, the system is built around ownership as the main path to financial stability. So renters are stuck in a structure that asks them to pay into a system without benefiting from it. Over years, this gap becomes massive. Two people earn similar incomes. One buys a home early. The other rents. Decades later, their financial positions look completely different, even if they worked just as hard. That difference isn't effort, it's access, and access isn't equal. Renters also face higher long-term costs in ways that aren't obvious. Renters' insurance. Application fees every time they move. Storage costs when leases don't line up. Furniture losses from frequent moves. Time off work to relocate. Transportation changes, each one seems small on its own. Together, they form a steady leak. Then there's the emotional toll of always asking permission. Permission to hang shelves. Permission to paint. Permission to keep a pet. Permission to stay another year. Living under someone else's rules in your own home wears people down. It reinforces a feeling of not fully belonging, of being a guest in your own life. And when people don't feel ownership, even emotional ownership, they disengage. They care less. They invest less. They accept less. This shows up in neighborhoods too. High renter turnover weakens communities. People don't know their neighbors. Relationships stay shallow. Trust doesn't build. And when community weakens, people feel more isolated. Isolation is another hidden cost. People often blame themselves for feeling tired, unmotivated, or stuck. But when your housing situation never feels stable, it's hard to feel grounded anywhere else. Renting also changes how people view time. When you own, time feels like it's working for you. Payments move you closer to something. When you rent, time feels like it's slipping away. Every year that passes feels like another year lost. That perception creates pressure. People rush decisions. They feel behind. They compare themselves to others. Social media makes it worse. Friends posting keys, homes, backyards, permanents. Renters scroll and feel like they missed something. That comparison hurts, even when people don't want it to. And yet, renters are told to be grateful. Grateful they have a place. Grateful they're not homeless. Grateful they have flexibility. Gratitude is important, but it shouldn't erase reality. Flexibility isn't helpful when you don't want to move. When you're forced to move. When flexibility is just instability with a nicer name. Another quiet drain shows up in retirement planning. People who rent into older age face a different future. Rent doesn't stop when you retire. Social Security doesn't adjust fast enough to match rent increases. And without equity, housing remains a monthly stress forever. That fear creeps in early. People in their 30s and 40s already worry about how they'll afford housing later in life. Not because they're pessimistic, but because the math doesn't feel reassuring. Saving is harder when rent takes such a large portion of income. Investing feels risky when housing isn't secure. Planning feels abstract when the present is so demanding. This is how renting drains hope, not just money. But here's what often gets missed. Most renters aren't failing. They're adapting to a system that shifted faster than people could keep up. Wages lagged. Housing costs exploded. Policies favored ownership without supporting access. Renters didn't choose this environment, they survived it. And survival takes energy. If you've ever felt tired even when nothing dramatic was happening, this might be why. It's the accumulation of small pressures. The monthly reset. The lack of progress. The uncertainty. It wears people down quietly, yet renters keep going. They show up to work, they raise families, they build lives. They find joy where they can. That resilience deserves respect, not judgment. And the truth is, this conversation isn't about blaming landlords or shaming renters. It's about acknowledging a reality that too often gets brushed aside. Renting in America isn't just expensive. It's draining because it asks people to give continuously without giving back stability, ownership, or long-term security. And we still haven't reached the deepest part of this story. Because the final drain isn't just about money or housing or stress. It's about how renting changes how people see their future and what they believe is possible. And this is where the real cost shows up, not on a bank statement. Not in a lease agreement, but in the way renting slowly reshapes how people imagine their future. When housing never feels secure, people stop dreaming long-term. They stop thinking 10 years ahead. 5 years ahead feels risky. Even 1 year ahead feels uncertain. Life becomes about managing the next rent increase, the next lease renewal, the next move. People tell themselves they'll plan later. When things stabilize, when rent goes down, when income goes up. But for many, that moment never clearly arrives. So they live in a constant in-between state, not struggling enough to collapse, not stable enough to relax, just surviving. Over time, this changes confidence. People start to feel like life is happening to them instead of being shaped by them. They stop believing they can build something lasting, not because they lack ability, but because the system keeps reminding them that nothing is guaranteed. And that belief is powerful. It affects careers. People stay in jobs they hate because the rent depends on it. They don't take risks, even smart ones, because one bad month could mean losing housing. Creativity shrinks. Courage shrinks. Even relationships feel the pressure. Couples argue about money more, about moving, about whether it's worth upgrading to a better place. Singles feel embarrassed inviting people over. Dating gets complicated when housing feels temporary. These aren't dramatic failures. They're quiet compromises. Small choices made again and again, slowly narrowing life. That's why renting feels draining even when people are doing okay. You can be employed, responsible, hardworking, and still feel stuck. You can follow the rules and still fall behind. You can do everything right and still feel like you rerunning on a treadmill that never slows down. And when people finally speak about this frustration, they're often told it's their fault. You should have saved more. You should have moved earlier. You should have chosen a cheaper city. Those statements ignore reality. They ignore how fast rents rose, how wages didn't keep up, how moving costs money, how cheaper areas often mean fewer jobs, worse schools, longer commutes. They ignore how complex life actually is. Renting didn't quietly drain people because renters are irresponsible. It drained people because the system normalized instability while pretending it was freedom. And yet, people adapt. Humans always do. Renters learn to budget tightly. They learn to live smaller. They learn to delay gratification. They learn to be flexible. They learn resilience. But resilience shouldn't be required just to exist. A healthy system doesn't ask people to constantly brace themselves. It gives them ground to stand on. The reason this topic matters isn't to create anger or fear. It's to create clarity. When people understand that their exhaustion isn't personal failure, something shifts. Shame loosens its grip. Self-blame fades, and in its place, awareness grows. Awareness leads to better conversations, better decisions, better demands from leaders, communities, and policies. It also leads to compassion. For yourself, for others, for the millions of people quietly carrying this weight without ever talking about it. If you're renting and feeling drained, tired, or behind, you're not imagining it. And you're not alone. And if this story sounded familiar, chances are someone you know is living it too. So here's a simple question to sit with. What would life feel like if housing gave people stability instead of anxiety? That question matters more than it seems. If this video made you think differently about renting, or if you've lived this experience yourself, share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone else feel understood for the first time. And if you know someone who's quietly struggling under rising rent, share this video with them. Sometimes just being seen makes the weight a little lighter. Thanks for staying with me.